Hello, John. How are you?
Hi, Maka. Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks. We're all locked down here in the UK, so we're spending
I know.
lot of time in the house. So we're all
Yeah,
good.
it's family time.
Well, yeah, whether you want it or not.
Yeah, completely. It's a challenging time for all of us that are in lockdown. We also here in Chile, we are entering now the lockdown again for the second wave, and it's very difficult, but we hope we will get through better than the first time.
Well, let's hope it's short, and let's hope that the vaccines are rolled out very quickly to get us back to normal. That's what we want. So.
Yeah, completely. John, and if you may, I will start reading your biography because you have a super interesting crime prevention career and septet career also. So I will start with your biography. John Strutton is the current chair of the UK Institute of Community Safety and is also the senior crime reduction and operational security manager at Transport for London, with responsibility for community safety, crime reduction, crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED, problem solving and operational security, protective security and counter-terrorism across the transport modes and 570 kilometers of road network covered by TfL. In this role, John has also delivered restorative justice programs, in-house training in basic crime prevention problem solving, and has developed specialists in dealing with issues as diverse as graffiti reduction, transport-related theft, and urban explorer trespass. John also developed TfL's original antisocial behavior order application process and used that experience to create a partnership CBO application process currently used to obtain orders for the Roads and Transport Policing Command of the Metropolitan Police Service as a part of a broader offender management remit. John also formulates and currently delivers the PAN-TfL security program, covering all non-government regulated functions and activities carried by Transport of London. Before joining TfL, John had senior positions in local government, including head of community safety for the City of Westminster and head of estate safety and risk management in the London Borough of Hackney. In both of these roles, John developed and delivered crime reduction, prevention process, and community safety strategies. So your career is very, very successful, John, and you have so many hits in your biography. So if I continue, I will stay like 3 days reading the biography. So congratulations for that, John.
Makes me feel old.
No, no way. You don't look old. But let's start from the beginning. How did you know septet? How did you start in septet?
Well, as you mentioned, I spent quite a lot of time in Hackney. My career actually started in the management of social housing, and Hackney, that you mentioned, is a very, very deprived borough in East London, and very high crime borough, particularly in the deprived areas within the borough, so the housing estates and so on. So back then, you know, I was taking steps to reduce crime opportunities, things, just basic things that we all do. The things, you know, like improving lighting, changing the layout on estates to stop cut-throughs and things like that for people, particularly people trying to get away from the police. Things like gates, you know, locks, fencing, you know, even involving tenants in surveilling the estate, in surveillance and evidence gathering and things like that. So I was doing all that. I was applying septet principles, but I hadn't even heard of septet. You know, I had no idea about septet as a specific crime prevention concept. And so at that, you know, I'd had no formal training at that point. I was going along and sort of learning by experience. finding out what worked and what didn't work. And if it didn't work, I'd have to go back to the beginning and try again with something else. So really very much trial and error. But of course, in time, that became a job because I was involved a lot with the police and had a lot to do with antisocial behaviour on housing estates. And that became a permanent job. So I kind of moved away from mainstream housing into the management of crime as on those housing estates. And it wasn't until much later that I then got the formal training that I really should have had at the beginning. But then that came in later, and I moved formally into the world of community safety. So yeah, that's where it all began, really.
Oh, very interesting. And as you said, septet is much about common sense. This is what Robert Stephens from Toronto, my master in septet, always says. It's much about common sense.
It is, but of course we have a saying in England, which is common sense is uncommon. So,
yeah.
So it's always good to have a good, solid theoretical basis for that.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And please, John, can you explain a little to our audience that is very global? How is the crime context now in the UK? I imagine with the COVID crisis, it must be more complicated.
Very, very much so. The UK crime context has changed dramatically due to COVID-19. There's been very much a move away from the sort of the traditional, for want of a better word, the traditional sort of acquisitive crimes, like things like theft and robbery and burglary of houses, and because obviously there's less people on the streets, and so your average criminal has fewer people to choose from, and so when they're applying their rational choice process, they've got less to pick from. So the profile of crime has changed quite dramatically, and of course the effects of COVID have got physical effects as well, in that these days, where in the past we've told people to keep their faces clear because we want to see pictures of them. You know, the UK has got more cameras than any other country in the world per capita. And of course now we're telling people to cover their faces with masks, which completely changes the detective capability, and therefore changes, for the time being anyway, it changes the importance of formal surveillance and also natural surveillance. It's completely changed the emphasis.
Incredible.
In the world of CPTED, we put a lot of emphasis on things like informal and formal surveillance, and of course COVID has changed that quite dramatically. With obviously there are positives, because less crime is good, and you know, we've got people in their houses all day, and so burglary has taken a nosedive. It's plummeted, which is good. But at the same time, we've seen a rise in other types of crime. So things like domestic violence, crimes that occur in the home, have gone up in the UK.
And this specific type of crimes, what are the protocols to manage with them?
Oh, that's very difficult for police in particular. It's really difficult because a lot of this stuff is going on behind closed doors, and they're very dependent on good reporting of the crime for them to become active and deal with the issue. So it becomes, in our world, we're always keen on being preventative. But for offences like domestic violence, of course, it's incredibly difficult to take a preventative approach, other than through awareness and having support networks ready to take people at the first chance they go. But that's very rare.
By telephone. So you mean supportive programs using telephone, for example?
Yeah, it can be, but in domestic violence, it's a particularly difficult crime in that it stems a lot of the time from a very dominating environment within the home, and therefore even opportunity to report can be incredibly difficult, particularly where an individual is being coerced and controlled. And so it's really hard to find ways to enable reporting in a safe way, because sometimes the very act of reporting can result in horrible offences taking place before the police can even react.
Yeah,
So,
I know. We are facing the same problem here
really?
in South America.
Oh wow, yeah. It's probably a global phenomenon as people's lifestyles are changing, and as the sort of very profile of their life is changing, and I
Completely.
think, and we know that people's mental health is being put under pressure through all of these different tensions that are being created in society. So yeah, I mean, the other thing that I would mention is that, of course, we're very conscious that that when we get back to normality, there may be a renewed backlash in all of those more traditional types of crime. So there may be a lot of criminals out there that want to make up for lost time and their loss of income. I mean, these are things that we need to be conscious of, and it may well
and to be
be
prepared
exactly
in the way of
so.
possibility. Yeah, to be prepared.
Exactly. So it's really important that we don't sort of, as we say, take our eye off of the ball. We've got to make sure that we sort of continue to plan for the return to normality. We mustn't drop our guard. We have to continue to promote prevention in all of the forms, as well as CPTED and all the other forms of prevention that we know how to do, because there is a real danger that backlash will occur, when things do return to normality.
I agree completely with you, John. And connecting with the transport system, do you think also in the COVID context, transport also shows a difference in crime patterns, or no?
Yeah, to some extent it does, but that's principally in terms of volume rather than type. So we still have the same types of crime occurring in transport, and there's reasons for that, obviously. But public transport is by necessity an open system, and therefore things like principles around defensible space, which we all know and understand, and actually we know they work in certain contexts, are harder to apply in a transport environment. But they're still possible using, tools like symbolic barriers and understanding delineation between public, semi-public, semi-private and private space. So, we use all of those things in the transport environment in London. But of course, the crimes don't change, because the issue really is crime opportunity. And some of the things that provide opportunity for crime in the transport environment are based on things like volume of people. So even though we've not got the same numbers, we do have periods of the day when volumes are still very high. And so that creates the usual opportunities for things like pickpocketing and sexual offences as well. So women being assaulted. At earlier points in the lockdown as well, before all of the pubs and restaurants were closed, of course, people went back out into the nighttime economy, and they made themselves vulnerable through drink again. And again, that is another crime opportunity type that occurs a lot on public transport, where people are either subjected to theft whilst they're incapacitated through drink, or in fact, in some cases, sexual assaults take place during that vulnerable time. So yeah, generally speaking, the levels have gone down though during COVID, but the crime types have remained pretty constant.
That's very sad to hear, but again, it's happening very similar here in the Latin American cities. And I wanted to ask you, do you think septet has something to support in this problem? Or septet is positive when it's well applied?
Absolutely, because the principles apply even in the transport environment. I mentioned things like symbolic barriers and so on. Surveillance. Now, even though we know people are more forensically aware, you might say, just the well lit, well managed, well cleaned, well surveilled environment still makes it a lower crime environment than wider society. So when you look at the crime figures on the public transport system in London, either during COVID or even during the normal times, they are massively lower than they are in the main, in the streets above the tube network, for instance. And if you talk to the police, for instance, the Metropolitan Police commander would give anything for the low crime figures that they see on public transport, that the British Transport Police see. So, it's clear that environment, that managed, well designed, well lit, well cleaned, the whole broken windows theory, it all applies in transport. And as long as you maintain it, you maintain a low crime environment. So yeah.
That's very interesting to hear. Yeah, I agree, También, completely with you. And I want to add to your comment, do you think it's very relevant, the support of the political authority?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's political support for the principles of crime prevention generally, but particularly designing out crime. I think it's essential, but there's a problem, isn't there? And I speak obviously from my experience of the UK, and I'll be interested to hear from you actually what your experience of this is. But I find that there is a huge lack of awareness in the political arena about septet, in particular, designing out crime, and particularly a lack of awareness of its benefits amongst politicians. And of course, with that lack of awareness, that can affect decision making around financial commitments, because a lot of what we want to do to design out crime, whether we like it or not, we're applying those principles to an existing environment. It's very, we do get the opportunity to contribute advice to new projects, and when we do, it's great. That's the best way to do it before the bricks are actually laid. But quite often in our world, we're applying our principles to an existing environment, and that invariably comes with some cost. To change
completely
they're built, it's much harder. So without that political support for the principle of septet and the understanding that actually, A, crime is bad for business, and B, that if you invest a little, you can actually reduce the impacts of crime quite dramatically. Without that awareness, and you don't get the support of the politicians, and so you won't get the financial commitment that you need. So I think, education and awareness for politicians, be they local politicians or national politicians, I think it's essential. And I think it's a really important role for the ICA.
Completely. In that sense, I want to highlight that we are developing an online course, an online septet basics course that I am sure it will be very helpful in the way that you are commenting.
Yeah, we need to, we've got to use everything that we've got to lobby politicians. That means, to try and influence them, to come around to understanding that this is good for everyone. It reduces costs. It's better for communities. It makes buildings last longer if you design them well. All the principles, they're just lack of awareness there. So it's almost you know, the first step. We didn't lay the foundations in the beginning. I mean, none of us were doing this at the beginning, but the foundations really needed to be laid with the decision makers.
Completely agree.
And then we wouldn't be having the battles that we have now to get them to understand.
Like fixing the problem. We are reacting and fixing problems that we could prevent.
Quite often, yeah, absolutely.
In your experience, do you think septet is with a participatory process involving the community, it has better results?
100%. And there's a number of reasons for that. You know, citizen involvement, I think, is what we call it in a lot of parts of the world. You know, it's crucial that citizens or communities have ownership of some of the interventions that we're delivering. That's because in the world of crime, there is never a single solution. You can have a single crime problem, but its contributory factors are manifold. There's loads of contributing factors. And so there is never a single fix. And one of the key important components to a crime fix in a community is the community itself. Now, there's the reason for that. It comes with lots of benefits. I mentioned ownership. It's really crucial that the communities own some of the solutions themselves, because we can't have a situation where things deteriorate and communities think, oh, it's someone else's problem to fix this. We're going to wait until someone else comes in and fixes it for us. And that doesn't engender ownership, and it doesn't engender continued improvement. All that tends to happen then is a fix will come in and things will gradually slip back because no one owns it locally. The other good thing about having citizen support in projects is, of course, citizens can influence politicians. We mentioned politicians a moment ago, and one of the things that politicians tend to react to quite well is citizen pressure.
Yeah.
They may not listen to me because I'm an officer of either the police or a local government or whatever. The politicians may not listen to me, but they'll certainly listen to the people that vote for them. And so that alone is a great reason for having citizen involvement in problem-solving projects. They can also motivate police, because the police are quite reactive to public pressure too. And police, again, are often a really important component, because a good problem-solving plan isn't just about environment, it's also about enforcement, education, engagement, and all these different features that can make a problem-solving plan work. And septet is right up there as one of the most important ones, because if you take crime opportunity away, then you're making it much harder for people to commit crimes in that environment.
Yeah, that's true, completely true.
You know, civic pride, it's a really massive thing in crime reduction. It really is. You know, civic pride itself is a crime reduction tool.
Yeah.
And getting community members involved in your project engenders that pride. It brings it in, it brings it to the front, you know. The other thing that's important, I think, that I should have mentioned at the beginning, is that you also need to speak to communities about what their priorities are locally. Because we also know, don't we, that sometimes perception isn't the same as reality. So the fear of crime can be driven by things that aren't actually evidenced in crime statistics. So there may be things going on that are unreported locally that don't result in a crime report, but the local community knows it's happening, and you'll only find that out by talking to them. Yeah. So their involvement at the beginning of projects to find out what their priorities are, what they want us to focus on, is really important. So,
Yeah,
100%.
completely agree. Yeah, and regarding the civic pride, I think it connects also with quality of life. When a community has a civic pride, they feel happy. They are very proud. They connect. They engage, and they enjoy more the city, the public spaces. It's a different tone.
Completely. And of course, then, you know, when you do a project, as you've done yourself, you know, having set out at the very beginning what your intended outcome is going to be, that takes into account that community aspiration, when at the end of the project it's actually delivered,
Yeah,
they can actually see, do you know what, this works, and I'll
completely.
now sign up in future. It gives you credibility, and it makes future projects that much easier.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
it's
Completely
a
done.
self-fulfilling process.
Yeah. Also, I want to ask you, because you are an active ICA member, and we are very happy to have you in our ICA family, global family. Would you recommend to the audience to become active ICA members?
Oh yes, yeah, definitely. There's a number of benefits. There's a number of benefits. When I've attended ICA conferences, the experience of people that are attending those conferences from all over the world, that's so valuable, because you know you might find someone in Chile is dealing with a problem that you're facing, but dealing with it in a different way. You don't have to learn yourself. You can benefit from their experience. And with the ICA, of course, it's worldwide. We've got people, practitioners working in the field all over the world that can feed in their experience. And by joining the ICA, you can benefit from that straight away. Of course, the other big benefit is formal training. You know, you can shortcut all those years of trial and error that I did before I got any formal training. You can shortcut that by doing the courses. The instant understanding of the principles, the criminological theories that drive these interventions that we recommend, and of course, by having that training behind you, it makes your argument stronger when you're dealing with, let's face it, a lot of police are not trained in crime prevention. This is something, you know, when I say this to people all over the world, really, when I explain to them that actually police don't know much about crime prevention. Police are trained in crime reaction.
Yeah.
And they're very good at it. And sometimes crime reaction is an important feature of a general crime prevention project, because you need to get them down. But when you explain to people that actually police don't really understand a lot about crime reduction, they're shocked. And so by having some formal training behind you, backing you up, it makes your position stronger as a practitioner. And so that's an important feature of training. And even for experienced practitioners, a formal training process, it validates their knowledge. So, you know, it gives validation to all of their years of experience and trial and error. And so it helps you to justify, it didn't just work for me, it's worked because, you know, it's evidence-based theory that's applied to the training package. So, yeah, without a doubt. And of course, the benefit of staying up to speed with change. By talking to all of the ICA members, as things change, you keep up to speed with those changes. You wouldn't be able to do that simply by reading the newspapers.
Yeah, you're right. You stay tuned with the state of art.
Exactly. So, yeah, 100% again, it would be a recommendation without a doubt for practitioners.
So thank you for your nice recommendation. And as final remarks, do you want to highlight some ideas?
Well, really, it's not really an idea. It really is more of a plea, which is for any practitioners that are watching this and listening, to go away and to try to spread the word. use whatever position they've got in, local authorities or even their influence as a local community member or whatever it is, your position in life. I think it's really important that we all go and spread the word about CPTED, about the benefits of reducing crime, what it can do for communities, what it can do for money saving, and big thing in today's world.
Yeah.
I'd definitely encourage, make that plea, go and spread the word, and speak to the ICA. You can get to the ICA through direct or through my institute here in the UK, the Institute of Community Safety. We're linked in, we're tightly joined at the hip with the ICA. So there is any way possible, speak to the ICA in order to get the momentum behind CPTED, because we need to re-establish it really. This whole COVID thing will come to an end, and we mustn't take our foot off the pedal.
Completely agree with you, and thank you so much for your wisdom and for your experience, John.
Well,
and anyone who wants to subscribe to this channel, please go ahead. And also you can find all our information of the ICA in www.cpted.net. So we will be very happy to have you in our global septet family. So stay safe, John.
Thanks a lot, Mecca.
And thank you so much. See you soon.
Bye-bye, everyone.